All right, good morning and welcome to the spring session of online yoga classes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Caroline Owen and I'm with Wavelengths Yoga. You can see us at www.wavelengthsyoga.com. So before we start this morning, I wanted to go over a couple of things that if you're joining us live, you'll see each class as the welcome screen, the screen that you should see right now, which lets you know that we'll begin at 10. If you're watching this online later, you can do it anytime. But I wanted to make sure that you understand that everything that I guide you in this class is a suggestion. So I've tried to keep the classes at a gentle level, but that doesn't mean that it's going to feel gentle for you. So if you need to modify or sit something out at any point, please do. I obviously can't see you. You can see me, so I can't correct you or offer suggestions. So if you're not sure about something, I would suggest that you modify on your own, sit it out, or you can always contact me afterwards to ask me about it and what you might do instead. So that's always a possibility. Listen to your body. So if you're not sure and you're uncomfortable, the best thing to do is return to a comfortable position for you. And ideally that would be something symmetrical like child's pose or a standing forward bend or a seated forward bend or, coming to Shavasana if you like, or hugging your knees in, that kind of thing. So just finding a place that's comfortable for you until you feel ready to continue on. And if you need to stop the class, if you feel overwhelmed in any way, physically, emotionally, mentally, you can always stop the class and rejoin later. So this spring term of classes will be available until the fall. So you have all spring and all summer to do the 10 classes, and you can do them as many times as you like. I will often give you breath cues. I will suggest when you might inhale, when you might exhale. These are also suggestions, and you can always follow your own breath. You can move and breathe at a pace that's comfortable for you. Whether it matches my pace or not is not important. It's really most important that you're never straining with your breath, that you're comfortable, and that you're breathing. And it's quite common to catch yourself not breathing. I've been practicing yoga for over 30 years, and I still sometimes find myself, when I'm really focused, stopping breathing for a moment, holding my breath. So you might also notice that, and when you do, simply check in with your breath and come back to a nice, easeful breath as much as possible. So I'm going to shift over to the video now. And you should be able to see me as well as the space that I'm in. So when I move back, you'll see me on the mat there. And I want to talk a little bit about our theme today before we get started. So our theme today is from the Yoga Sutras, and you might, if you've studied the Yoga Sutras at all, this may be familiar to you. In Sanskrit, the words are Ishvara Pranidhana. And it shows up in a few different contexts in the Yoga Sutras, and it means different things in different contexts. Probably the simplest definition would be faith, but it also has the idea of doing our best and letting go of the result. So trusting that when we do our best, that whatever the result is, will serve us in some way, even if it's not the result that we expect. That when we get hung up on the result, we stop enjoying the journey quite as much. And the practice of yoga is really a practice of mindfulness. And in that mindfulness, it's more about the journey than about the destination. Right? So it's more about being in our bodies, being with ourselves, being present with ourselves, and less about the perfect body we might end up with, or the relaxed and calm mind that we all would love to have 24/7, but really about being present with ourselves and letting go of whatever our expected or hoped for result is at the end of the day. That we could simply enjoy our lives and enjoy the journey along the way, and the peace of faith that whatever happens, that we will survive and thrive through that. So we're going to work on backbends today, gentle backbends, and the idea is to start to work to open the front of the body and strengthen the back of the body, which is an antidote to all of the forward slouching that we tend to do. And we'll be exploring not just backbends, but how when we move our shoulders and our hips, the effect, how that effect is on the spine. And so what we'll see most likely is that as we move the shoulders and the hips, that the spine is automatically affected. And, you know, really essentially most every movement that we do has some effect on the spine. So we're going to explore that, explore gentle back bends today. So we're going to start in a lying down position to do a little bit of centering first, and then we'll get on with our movement. So you can get yourselves comfortable on your mat, and I will see you there. So I am going to start this part seated so that I can have a good voice to guide you through the centering. You're welcome to be seated if you prefer. You're also welcome to lie down in any position that's comfortable for you. So taking a moment to get settled. And see if you can be aware of the feeling of the ground beneath you. And if possible, allow your body to relax and settle into the earth. You're welcome to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. If it feels better to keep your eyes open, that's also fine. So paying attention to the rhythm and the movement of your breath. There's no need to change your breath at all, but to simply have the sense that you are breathing, being aware of that rhythm and movement without trying to change anything, but simply noticing that flow, that rhythm, that movement. Well, for some people, following the breath creates some anxiety or is uncomfortable. And if that's the case for you, drop paying attention to the breath and maybe simply notice what sounds are present in your space this morning or this afternoon or evening. Notice if your mind is a distraction to you today. Are your thoughts pulling your attention away from the moment, or are you pretty focused in the here and now? Please try to leave any judgments that you may have aside. If you can, simply notice without judging, without trying to change. We'll take a few more breaths here, and you might also tune into your mood today. What kind of mood are you bringing to the mat? Again, without judgment. Whether you're feeling pleasant, stressed, upset, joyful. See if you can welcome all of that without judgment. And knowing that even if judgment creeps in, that it's possible to observe the judgment without judging. So transition to begin to do a bit of movement. So if you are lying on the ground, that's great. You can stay there and bend your knees if they're not already bent, so your feet are flat on the floor. And if you're not lying on your back, you might now take a moment to transition from whatever position you're in onto your mat with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor, knees pointing at the ceiling. If your legs had been straight, and you can try this if you like, you can straighten your legs and notice, does that change anything in terms of the shape of my spine? And then as you bend your knees again, maybe notice what happens to your low back, if anything. So really there's no right or wrong answers when we're checking in and noticing the body. There are tendencies. Many people tend to have a similar experience, but there's always outliers. There's always those who have a different experience in their bodies, and it certainly does not mean there's anything wrong or that you're doing anything wrong. It's general variations that we all have. So observe and notice what happens for you. So we're going to start with some arm movement. So if you take the arms down alongside the body and slowly raise them up overhead, maybe the backs of your hands come to the floor, maybe you need to bend your elbows, maybe the hands don't quite come to the floor, wherever you end up is fine. And then you'll bring the arms back down to your sides. So simple movement, we'll repeat this a few times. Arms raising overhead. Make sure you don't force the shoulders to a position that's uncomfortable, so stop before you feel strained in your shoulders. So for some of you, that might be hands to the ground, and that will feel easy for you. For others, depending on how your shoulder joint is shaped and the tightness of your muscles or past injuries will have an effect on what works best for you here. So you're noticing the spine and if there's any change as you move your arms. And we'll start to bring in some movement with the legs. So alternating sides, you can bring one knee in at a time. Bring the hands for you and a little squeeze. So leg comes down as the arms reach up, and then you'll bring the opposite knee in. And we'll switch sides like that a few times. Again, you can pay attention to the shape of your spine and how it might alter as you do each movement. You're welcome to coordinate your breathing here. You'd inhale as the leg comes down and the arms go up, and then exhale as the knee comes in and the arms come down. Let's do one more round. So once more with each leg. And then next time you end up with the right knee hugged in toward your chest, stay there for a few breaths. So again, you might tune into and pay attention to your spine on the ground. Has it changed from when you were lying with the foot on the ground versus knee to chest? While we're here, we'll do a little bit of movement for this leg to warm up the big muscles in the front and back of the thigh. So you can take your hands behind your thigh if you like. If it's more comfortable for you, the arms can come to the ground. And what we'll do is we'll bend that right leg a few times. You can reach it up toward the ceiling. So again, hands can rest behind the leg, or you can do this without holding the leg at all. You're welcome to leave the leg in the air and circle the ankle around. If you prefer to keep moving with the bend and straightening of the knee, that's fine too. As you're circling the ankle, try to stay connected and tuned into the experience. What do you notice as you do this? Right, and then let's relax that leg. You can remove the hands if they're still behind the leg and give it a little shake. And then we'll hug the knee back into the chest, and you're welcome to bring your hands over the shin or behind the knee if that's a more comfortable position for you. Notice the shape of your spine, and as you extend the left leg on the ground, if that's comfortable for you, you might notice, excuse me, if the shape of your spine changes in that movement. So hugging that right knee in now, pressing out through the left heel. Put a little pressure down into your left heel and feel that left thigh engage. And then as you release the right leg, you can bring the foot to the floor, slide the leg straight, and extend the arms over your head for a nice big breath in. And then as you exhale, slowly lower the arms to your sides. And you can let both legs relax for a moment and maybe check in with the shape of your spine, maybe the feeling from one hip to the other, one knee to the other, and one ankle to the other, where we've already done some work on the right, but not so much on the left. And then let's bend both knees again. And again, as you do that, you might notice the shift of your spine, the tilt of your pelvis changes a little bit. And you may notice what that does to the shape of your spine. We'll raise the arms over the head, taking a breath in. And then as you exhale, draw the left knee in toward your chest and stay there for a few breaths. So again, tuning into noticing and being aware of the changing shape of your spine in relation to the ground. So when we're lying in this position, we get a lot of feedback. We can feel the ground in relation to the back of the body, as opposed to when we're standing or sitting. These changes may still be happening, but they're more subtle, and we're not as aware of them because of the lack of a reference point, like the ground in this case. So here you can also take the hands behind the leg or let go altogether, and we'll bend and straighten that leg. So reaching up, excuse me, bending in. If you want to coordinate your breathing, inhale as you extend the leg. Exhale as you bring the knee in and squeeze the breath out a little. Continue a couple more times like this. And then again, you're welcome to leave the leg in the air if that's comfortable for you while you circle your ankle around. You might be aware of sensations in the ankle as well as perhaps in the calf and the shin. You may even feel sensation up into the hip or the thigh. It's also quite normal to feel very little sensation, to not feel much at all as you move your body. So tune into what's present for you. Right, and then you can release the hands if they're still on the leg. Give that leg a little bit of a shake. And then draw the knee in toward the chest, gently hugging the knee there. And if it's comfortable for you, you might extend the right leg on the ground. And as you extend that leg, you might also notice how the shape of your spine changes in relation to the ground. That right leg can remain active, heel gently pressing down as you gently squeeze in with the left knee. And then with your next breath in, you might release that leg and extend the arms overhead as you stretch the left leg out on the ground. Taking a breath in and then releasing. Arms come down, the legs can relax, feet might fall out to the sides. If you're more comfortable lying down with your knees bent, you can certainly bend your knees here. And take another moment to simply observe the body as it is. Notice the spine, the shape of the spine, how the hips, knees, and ankles feel now that we've worked both sides. And then let's bend both knees again, bringing the feet to the floor. The arms can rest a little bit away from your body, or they can rest on your body for this next one, whatever you find more comfortable. We just need to get the arms a little bit out of the way of the legs, which are going to move out to the sides. So for this one, again, we're going to pay attention to the changing shape of the spine as we open the knees, taking a breath in, soles of the feet come together, and then If you're coordinating with your breath, you'll exhale, knees come together, press down into the feet. So inhaling, opening. Exhaling, knees come back together and gently pressing down. So simple movement. Your awareness is to pay attention to the changing shape of your spine in relation to the ground here. And for the last few times, if you want to add a little bit more back bend to this exercise, you can take the arms to your sides. And as you open the knees, you can extend the arms overhead. And then as you close the knees, the arms come back to your sides. So one or two more of whatever version that you're working with today. And then next time you come back to your starting position with the knees together, you can pause there. And we'll separate the feet to about hip distance apart and bring the heels in so they're more or less lined up underneath your knees. And that means there's a few inches between your sit bones and your heels, most likely. Now, if your knees are not happy to flex that much, you can certainly have the feet a little bit further away from the hips to keep your knees happy. So finding a place somewhere in that range that feels comfortable for your knees. The arms can, actually we'll use the arms for this one with bridge, so we'll take the arms overhead, as long as that's comfortable for your shoulders. If you feel like your shoulders would prefer to sit this one out, just leave the arms down at your sides. So for this one, pressing into the feet. As you lift the hips, you'll also extend the arms overhead. And then as you lower the hips, the arms also come down to your sides. If you like, you can coordinate your breathing. You'd inhale as you lift, and then exhale as you lower. If you want to add one more little element to this, as you come to the top of the pose and you finish your inhale, you could pause for a second, holding the breath gently, and then exhale and release down. If that doesn't feel like a strain for you, you can continue a few more with that 1 or 2 second pause at the top of the pose and then releasing. And then next time you come down, pause there. Keep breathing, just pause with the movement. And we will come back into the pose, and here you have a couple of options. So if moving in and out of the pose feels best for you today, and that might be good if you're feeling a little tight today, or you're feeling tired and you want to kind of keep things moving, you can keep the pose going dynamically. And if you want to stay in the pose and work a little bit more opening across the chest, I'll give you an option to stay and to find a little more space across the collarbones. So in this version, if you're staying, you can keep your arms down at your sides. Again, feet under the knees, comfortable distance away from the sit bones. And as you're ready, you'll, with an exhale, put a little pressure into your feet to start that motion, and then inhale to lift up into the pose. And then when you get there, you can either keep your arms at your sides and gently press down to find a little more lift in the chest, or if you want even more, you can wiggle your body a little bit side to side and start to roll the shoulders under you. And at that point, turning the palms toward the ceiling will mimic the external rotation of the shoulders and keep the arms in a nice open position. Some of you might be comfortable to bring the hands together, interlace the fingers, and press down with the arms. If trying to bring the hands together under you sort of ends up in some awkward position with the elbows bent or the fingers barely touching, I would recommend leave the arms apart and just let them be relaxed on the ground beside you. When you're ready to come out of the pose, if you've wiggled your shoulders towards each other, you can wiggle them apart and take your time to slowly lower back down to the earth. When you get there, knees can come into the chest and you can place one hand on each knee. Pause to notice the shape of your spine here. And then you might draw the knees a little toward your body and then move the knees away from your body. If you want to coordinate breathing here, exhale as you draw in and inhale as you move the knees away. Notice the shape of your spine. It's just a little movement of the knees. A few inches forward, a few inches back. How does that affect the spine? As the knees come into the chest this time, if it feels comfortable for you, you might hug the knees here for a few breaths. The hands could stay on the knees, or you could interlace your fingers over your shins. If it's more comfortable to have the knees apart as you hold the knees, that's also totally fine. And then if you want to add a bit of movement, maybe rocking a bit to massage those big muscles that support the spine, or you could circle your knees around to bring a little more massage to the area around the sacrum at the back of the hips. Great. And then when you're ready, we'll let the feet come to the floor. Again, arms coming out to the sides. And here again, we're only going to ask the legs to move, but we're going to pay attention to how this affects the shape of the spine. And this time we're moving the knees together to one side. So as we move the knees toward one side, how does that affect the spine? And then as we bring them back to center, what changes? And then to the other side. So you can continue this twist at your own pace if you want to coordinate your breathing. Inhale as you come to the center. Exhale as you go to the side. Optionally, the head can turn in the opposite way of the legs, and then back to center with the knees, and then the other way. And you're continuing for a few more times at your own pace, noticing how the spine changes when we invite the legs to move to the sides together. Right, and then gradually draw your knees back to the center. And once more, we'll bring the knees up in toward the chest. And here again, you have some options with the arms. So the legs will stretch toward the ceiling. The hands could stay on the knees or come behind the legs. Option 2 is arms out to the sides. Option 3, arms overhead. So always we're coming back to the center, hands to knees on the exhale. And on the inhale, the legs will stretch and the arms can come into whatever position works best for you. Coordinating breath, inhale as you extend, exhale as you draw in. And then hugging the knees in for a couple of breaths. Again, if there's any movement that you would like to do here, please feel free. So in a moment, we'll transition over to sitting. So you can bring your knees, so your feet to the floor, roll over to one side, use your opposite hand to help guide you up to seated. And you can sit on a cushion or a blanket. You could sit on a chair if you've got one handy. really whatever's comfortable for you. And if you take your hands onto your knees or thighs, and we'll start with a little bit of what we would call the cat-cow movement on all fours, which we normally do on all fours. We'll do it seated. In a moment, we'll transition and do it on all fours for those whose knees are willing. So with an inhale, you're going to lift the chest, draw the shoulders back, and find a little bit of extension or arch in the back. And then as you exhale, you can allow the back to round, head to come down. And continue like that for a few more rounds. Inhaling, extension, and exhaling to flexion. And then coming back to a neutral position with your spine, we're going to add on to this extension and flexion. And what you might be aware of now is there's no ground behind us. There's nothing to reference the changing shape of our spine. So it's more of an internal experience of our bodies moving as opposed to in relation to some fixed object like the ground. For the next one, we'll take the hands, interlace the fingers, and as long as it's comfortable for your shoulders, you can bring the hands behind your head and let the elbows come wide. Shoulder blades are moving in and down, so towards each other and down towards your hips. And again, as long as it's comfortable for you, you can let the chest lift a little and allow the head to rest in your hands, elbows wide. Take a breath in here. And then as you begin to exhale, you can let the upper back round a little bit. Please don't yank on your head. You can bring the elbows in towards each other and open up the space between your shoulder blades. And then you'll inhale, open the elbows, let the chest lift and the head rests easily into the hands without straining. And then as you exhale, if you're coordinating the breath, you'll let the elbows come forward without yanking your head, opening the shoulder blades. And repeat that a few times. And if you find that for any reason this doesn't work for you, it's uncomfortable in the shoulders or the neck, then come back to where we were a moment ago, hands on the knees. Right, so if the hands are behind the head, you'll come back to a neutral position. Take your interlaced fingers and turn the palms toward the ceiling as you reach up. Big breath in here and then release and slowly lower the arms down to your sides. You can bring the hands back to the knees and maybe we'll do a few circles with the torso, getting into the sides of the waist a little bit more. You can do a few circles in one direction and then at some point switch, go the other way. And then making your way back to neutral position, back to the center, we'll transition to all fours. So you can make your way onto your hands and knees into tabletop position. And here, as long as it's comfortable for your wrists, you've got the heels of your hands under your shoulders. Any wrist issues, you can try some variations like maybe coming onto your fists. And my recommendation, if you come onto your fists, is to have your thumbs pointing forward. So when your thumbs are pointing forward, there's less risk of falling over your hand and creating bigger issues with your wrists. So thumbs forward if you're using fists to support yourself. And the other option here, or another option, there's lots of options, would be to take the end of your mat, roll it up, and place the heel of your hand on the rolled up mat. And that's going to put less angle on your wrist, so it's less of a 90-degree angle, a wider angle in fact. And it's also going to provide a little more cushioning for the heels of your hands. So a couple options there for wrists, and we'll move into the cat-cow here. So inhaling, to extend or arch the back, exhaling to flex around the spine. Try to think of elbows being soft, shoulders moving back so you're not locked and dumped into your shoulders. Elbows soft. If you want to add child's pose, instead of just rounding your back, you could come all the way back, hips toward heels, head toward the ground. And then adding an optional variation for those who want more. So we know from being on the ground that when we extend the arms and legs, we get more extension of the spine. So we're going to try a variation where we extend opposite arm and leg. If you try same arm and leg, it's very difficult to balance. It's possible, but very difficult. And then bringing them down. And then other diagonal pair, reaching up, bringing them down. You can coordinate this with your breathing as well. So you'd inhale, extending. Exhale, come in. You could add child's pose to your exhale if you like. Option. And then stretching out the other way. Other diagonal pair. Maybe child's pose. A few more like that. And if you've opted to stay seated because your knees don't want to support your weight, as you inhale, you can lift the arms. I'm kneeling here, but you would be doing this seated if your knees were not happy. So it would be a bigger extension as you lift the arms, and then coming forward on your exhale. So let's come back to all fours now. And we're going to move into warrior pose, which is a warrior one, which is also a spinal extension or back bend. And you have lots of options of how to get there. So we're going to end up with the left foot forward and the right foot back for our first warrior. If downward dog is an option for you, you can tuck your toes under, go to downward dog and step your left foot forward. If you prefer to come to a kneeling position and step one foot forward and then bring the hands down to lift up, that's another option. So however you find is best for you to get to that position with your left leg forward, right foot back. And then if you have blocks handy and you want to use them, you can to place your hands on the ground. You can also bring your hands up onto your front knee. So we'll start with a forward bend version. And again, your blocks can be in any height if you've got them handy that suit you, or hand on the front knee as we bend. And we're not going to lock or push that leg straight, but move it straighter. Press into your back heel and feel that outer edge of your back foot firmly planted as you bend and straighten the front leg. Great, so let's bend that front knee so it's more or less over your front ankle. If your hands are down on the ground or on blocks, you can bring your hands up onto your front knee. And then as we begin to lift upright, extend the arms overhead and the shoulders relax down. So from this bent knee position, this is a spinal extension. As we straighten the front leg, and you can try this, the lower back tends to flex more, come more neutral, and as we bend the knee, we tend to get a little more back bend as the upper body comes back a bit. So you can try bending and straightening the knee a few times here. And then also with the arms lifted, we're getting more extension. So we can, as we bend the knee, arms are up, and then we can straighten the leg and bring the arms down for a more neutral spine. So inhale into warrior one, exhale to a more neutral spine. And then if you like, you can stay for a few breaths. If you prefer to keep moving, that's totally fine and a great option. I'm noticing that it's a little hard to see the top of me with the window behind me, but My shoulders are drawing down, and I'm bringing a little bit of engagement to the core. So I'm bringing the bottom of my ribs and the top of the hips a little closer together. So I'm bringing a little more neutral position for the pelvis, and then looking for a bit more extension in the upper back. And let's bring the arms down, either to the front knee or to the ground or your blocks, and we'll step forward to a standing forward bend. From here, hands can come up to the knees, and we'll find a little bit of extension. Breathing in, and then exhale, either elbows onto your thighs, or you can reach the hands toward the ground and take a few breaths in a forward bend. When you're ready, lift all the way up with a breath in. And then exhale, releasing the arms to your sides. So as you check in and tune in with your body here, you might notice, since we've only done one side of warrior, you may feel a little lopsided. We've done lots of back bending already, very gentle, subtle back bending, and some maybe not so subtle. So feel, maybe any kind of lift or opening that's available to you. And coming back to our theme of simply doing our best, enjoying the journey, being mindful, and really letting go of the possible or hoped for result from our practice. Simply being in our bodies, doing the work without an eye to what we hope might be the outcome. Engaging with a sense of faith and trust that the work that we do will have a result in the long term one way or another, whatever that is. Let's take a breath in and come up. Exhale and come forward again. It could be hands to knees or blocks or the ground. Try to let the head release for a moment. And then we'll try warrior on the other side. So we'll start by stepping back this time with the left foot. The right foot is forward, and your left foot is turned out on an angle towards the left so that the whole foot can be on the ground. The heel, the outer edge of your foot, all of your toes, the ball of your foot. And then we'll bend and straighten the front knee. As you bend the front knee, if you find your back foot is lifting off the ground, then what you're going to want to do is step your back foot forward a little bit. So you can bend, and you're only bending so that knee comes over the ankle, and then straightening only to the point where it's a comfortable stretch for you. So finding that spot for your back foot that's just right, where you can bend the knee over the ankle, you're not losing the connection with the back edge of your foot. And then we're going to bring the hands up onto the front knee if they're not there already. Pause there. And then we'll come up into Warrior One. And again, as we come into Warrior One, we want to keep a little bit of engagement through the core, a little lift in the chest. And as we bend the front knee and lift the arms, we get more extension. As we straighten the leg and lower the arms, the pelvis and the spine come to a more neutral position. So we'll move back and forth from the more extended to the more neutral. If you want to coordinate your breathing, inhale as you lift, and exhale as you lower. Again, if you choose, you can stay for a few breaths in warrior. Checking in, the front knee is a little bit bent. It doesn't have to be as far bent as right over the knee. The more that knee, over the ankle, the more the knee is bent, the more you're going to find extension in the back. And of course, the wider the feet are front to back, the more extension you're going to find in your spine as well. So there's lots of ways to vary this pose to make it accessible. When you're ready, we'll bring the hands back down. And for this one, you're going to want to bring the hands right to the ground and find your way back to all fours. So you know, if that means lowering the back knee first or coming to downward dog first, however you want to get there is fine. So maybe to downward dog for a couple of breaths. And then as you're ready, you can lower the knees to come to all fours. And again, moving with the cat-cow position or all fours to child's pose a few times. We want to bring the spine and the pelvis back to neutral after the work in warrior of being asymmetrical, coming back to symmetry. A couple more times, all fours to child's pose. Right. For the next pose, puppy pose, this might be familiar to some of you. In puppy pose, we keep it's also a bit of a back bend, and we're going to keep the knees right underneath the hips, or the hips right over top of the knees, and you'll come down onto your forearms to begin with. So this is a big shoulder stretch, and you might modify it to have less of a shoulder stretch depending on what your body has to say about this pose. So the first version, which is much less stretch on the shoulders, is to take the elbows to the sides and let the forehead come down to the ground. And then you're letting the chest relax toward the ground. Getting a little bit of a back bend here. Now, for those of you with shoulders that are a little bit happier with a bigger stretch, you can, instead of taking the elbows to the sides, you'll take the arms forward, bring the forehead down, and bring the upper arms closer to the ears, stretching the arms out, and again, relaxing the shoulders down. You want to draw the shoulder blades wide and have some pressure drawing back with the hands towards the head. So really staying active in the upper back and chest. And that way we're not, ideally not overstretching the shoulders here. When you're ready to come back out of the pose, you can walk the arms back in and come back to all fours. For those of you who are comfortable in child's pose, you can send the hips back toward the heels and come to child's pose. If not, often a modified puppy where the elbows are just underneath the shoulders is a better variation. And this again may depend on how much your knees want to flex. If you're comfortable in child's pose, and you can either have your forehead on the ground or on a block, you might be comfortable to take your arms back by your feet. This is definitely not comfortable for everyone, especially if you're needing to support your head. So if you don't have a block and you need to support your weight here or support your head on your hands, then you're going to forget all about taking your arms back. You can be in whatever position's comfortable for you. So again, it could be something like this with your hands under your head or your arms back, or even up here in a modified puppy pose. Right, so from your child's pose, you'll make your way back up to all fours. And we're going to work on what's called contraction back bends, where we contract the back to lift up away from the ground. And these are really wonderfully strengthening back bends. Many people find them a little bit challenging because it asks muscles to work that we often find are weak and overstretched, underworked in our bodies. So these muscles of the lower back. We're going to take the hands forward from all fours so that the heel of your hand is roughly where your fingertips were. And then let the hips come forward so your knees, hips, and shoulders are in a line. And this would be considered half plank or kneeling plank. So full plank would be lifting the knees up. You're welcome to do that if that's available to you. It's a little bit more work. And if you've got the knees down, and even if you don't have the knees down, you may want to bring them down for this next part where we roll the body to the ground. So bend your elbows first, Let the thighs come down, the hips, the belly, the chest, and the forehead. I've got my microphone here, so my forehead is not easily going to come to the ground without smushing the mic. So your forehead can come to the ground. I'm going to stay up a little bit, and we're going to bring our arms forward so the elbows are on the ground, tucked into your sides, palms on either side of your face. And we want to really ground ourselves here by gently squeezing the buttocks and the thighs, pressing down into the hips, down into the thighs, even into the tops of your feet. And then from there, pull back a little with your hands towards your hips. Inhale, lift your chest and head. Exhale and lower down. Doesn't matter how high you lift. Keeping engaged through the buttocks and the hips and the thighs, pressing down. And finding perhaps a little bit of lift and lightness in the upper body. You can keep moving up and down if you like, or if you want to stay for a few breaths, try this variation where you lift just a little bit with your inhale, exhale, and try to keep the height that you got in that first lift. Next inhale, find a little more lift. Exhale and try to keep that lift. And keep lifting another little tiny bit each inhale and try to keep that lift as you exhale until you reach a place of comfortable maximum. Stay there for a couple of breaths. And then when you lower down, come down slowly. You're welcome to move your hands under your head if you like, or turn your head to one side if that's more comfortable. You can let the heels fall away, toes come in together, and relax across the back of the hips, the lower back, the thighs. And see if you can imagine breath moving into this area of your lower back and sacrum. And you feel a little bit of movement there with your breath. That might or might not be available to you. Let's see if you can tune in for a few breaths. Feel the belly and the lower back, perhaps expanding a little with your breath. We'll do one more set of working with Cobra. And before we do that, if you want to give your lower back a little bit more movement, you could bend your knees to somewhere around 90 degrees and take the legs side to side. Okay, and then when you come back to the center, again, extend your legs. Tuck the elbows into your sides, elbows on the ground, palms by your face. It's also possible to do Cobra with the elbows up and the palms on the ground. And for me, I find that anyone with even slight wrist issues appreciates taking the weight off the wrists in this variation. But if you prefer Cobra with the elbows up and the hands down, that's also fine. So again, we're going to bring the forehead down. On an exhale, gently press down into the hips and thighs, gently squeezing the buttocks. Keeping that engagement through the lower body. Inhale, lift the chest and head. Exhale and lower. Again, you can repeat that a number of times dynamically. And if you want to stay for a few breaths, you can stay either simply staying in one position or lifting a little with each breath when you're staying. And for those of you who really want to work a bit more here and find a little more strength in this pose, you could take the arms and extend them overhead as you hold the pose. So any variation that works for you. And whenever you feel ready to come out of the back bending, and if you're really enjoying it and you want to stay a little longer and hold these variations for a little longer, you feel completely free to do that. Whenever you're ready, you can lift back up to all fours and take your time to engage in whatever movement would feel good here. So it could be coming back to the cat-cow. It might be circling your hips around here, getting a little more movement into the hips and the waist. And maybe it's a little side to side movement. We haven't done any side bending today, so you might appreciate a little tail wagging on all fours. Or maybe for you, downward dog is your favorite pose, and you'd love to just hang out there for a few breaths and maybe walk your feet in place and stretch out the legs a bit. So please explore a little here. Find what would feel good to your body. Check in and move in a way that feels just right for you. And if you're not sure, you might come to child's pose and check in and relax there for a few breaths. So take your time with whatever movement you're currently doing. And we're going to move next into our relaxation for the class, our Shavasana. And I want to give you an option for doing a very gentle back bend in Shavasana if you like. This is totally optional. It's definitely not required, and you might decide to try it today, or you might try it some other time when you're feeling the need to open your chest a little more. So you'll need a blanket for this, and I've got one of these Mexican blankets, which are quite popular with yoga students. And I just have it folded twice so that it's in this sort of rectangular shape, and I've got tassels on one end and fold on the other end. And I'm going to make this into a little kind of a tube. You could roll the blanket if you like. I prefer to fold it like an accordion because I find the roll is not as comfortable. So I'm going to take it into 4 sections. So I've got 3 folds, 1 fold, 2 folds, 3 folds, and I have 4 sections. So I've got kind of a flat little, it's not really a tube because tubes are round, but flat blanket stacked up here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to sit on my mat, not on the blanket. So I've got and I put the tassel end by my head so that I'm not sitting on these tassels under my back. I'm going to pull this blanket right up to my sacrum, and I'm just going to lie back over the blanket. And there's going to be a little bit of extra at the end, depending on how long your blanket is. And I'm going to tuck it under and make myself a little pillow. For me, this is most comfortable if I have my knees bent, feet a little apart, knees together. For you, it might be straight legs, or could be knees to the sides, maybe on blocks. So whatever's comfortable for you. You can also skip the blanket altogether and simply lie on your back in our usual position for Shavasana. So I'll give you another minute or so to get yourself set up in whatever position is comfortable for you. And if you have some other variation that you would prefer for Shavasana, then please feel free to be in whatever position is comfortable. So as you come onto your mat and you find a comfy position, and if you've tried the blanket and you don't like it, feel free to scrap it at any time. You can let it go now or later. And then wherever you find yourself, again, you're welcome to close your eyes. You might also keep your eyes open if you prefer. And if that's the case, you may want to soften your gaze a little bit so you're not so distracted by any movement around you. And then come back to a feeling of perhaps settling here and feeling the ground or the blanket beneath you, being aware of your body in the space. This idea of Ishvara Pranidhana that I mentioned at the beginning of class, this idea of faith or connecting with what is without an eye to what the result of that situation might be, but simply engaging in each moment for the joy of each moment. The flip side of faith, of course, is doubt. And all of us from time to time experience doubt, even the most faithful among us. And maybe for you, doubt is a more common state of mind. And as we come into Shavasana, recognizing that it's possible to hold two opposing feelings or views at the same time, that we could have faith and have doubt, that we can be joyful and grieving, that we might be happy for a situation but feel some sadness in that situation as well. So knowing that we are full of dichotomies in how we think and how we feel, and that this concept of Ishvara Pranidhana exists differently in the real world than it does in a perfect world. That we sometimes have faith, we sometimes have doubt, we sometimes have joy, sometimes grief. And all of those feelings can mingle together. So if possible, being present with whatever you're holding in this moment. And then tuning into the rhythm of your breath, if that's a comfortable focus for you. And allowing all of those thoughts and feelings to still be present, but take more of a back seat as you bring your awareness to your breath. And again, if the breath isn't a comfortable focus for you, you might instead choose to focus on the sounds around you, any sensations, or you could open your eyes and be aware of your physical presence in the room. So whatever it is that helps you to stay mindful and in the moment. And then let your body soften a little more if you can. Feel as you exhale your body sink down a little more. If you're feeling tension or strain in your body anywhere, acknowledge that. Maybe send some breath there and invite a little more space if that's possible. I'd like to share with you just a small section of a longer chant on the theme of faith. And one of the other words for faith that's used in the Yoga Sutras is Shraddha. And that's the word that's used in this chant. Om Shraddhayagni samidhyate Shraddhaya vindate havi Shraddham bhagasya murdhani vachasa vedayamasi Priyagashradhe dataha Priyagashradhe didasataha Priyam bhoje shuyajvasu idam uditam kriti Yatha deva asureshu Shraddha mugreshu chakrire evam bhojeshu yajvasu asmakam muditang kriti Shraddhan devaya jamanaha Vayurgopa upasate Shraddha gung hridaya yakutya Shraddhaya huyate havihi Om. If you'd like to continue to stay in Shavasana for a little longer, you're most welcome to do that. And for those who are ready to finish the practice and move on with your day, you can start to bring in a little movement. Gradually stretch and move in any way that would feel good, and eventually you'll roll onto your side and come back to seated. You're also welcome to, at this point, if you're watching on the recording, to shut the recording off and stay with your meditation or Shavasana a little longer. And if you've come to sit, you can bring your palms together, and we'll end the class with the word namaste, which is a greeting in Sanskrit, which could be translated as I greet you, or I honor you, or I greet and acknowledge the divinity in you, is a common translation. Namaste.